Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It started with a laugh. Not the kind you share. The kind you hear through a wall. It was late. Past midnight. I was walking down the hallway toward the bedroom when I heard her voice through the cracked bathroom door. Low, sharp, full of something that didn't belong in our house. She was on speakerphone, and she was talking about me. Not just talking, dissecting. I don't know, he's just soft. In bed. Emotionally too. Like he needs encouragement for everything. Then the laugh again. From her friend. Maybe two friends. One of them said something I couldn't make out. But she answered, weak. That's the word. He's weak. That word stayed in my mouth like acid. I didn't go in. I stood there, listening, frozen. Not because I was heartbroken. Because I was stunned at how easily she said it. How practiced it sounded. Like it wasn't the first time. She eventually came out, passed me in the hallway, kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong. And I didn't say a word. That was the moment I stopped playing my role. I didn't confront her. Didn't ask who she was talking to. Didn't accuse or demand or beg. I smiled, said goodnight, and started my plan. Not revenge. Not theatrics. Just a shift. A quiet, focused shift. She thought I didn't hear. Thought she'd outgrown me. Thought her critique was clever, even harmless. She didn't understand the damage she'd done. Not to me. To herself. Because she didn't insult my ability. She insulted my identity. She forgot the one thing that holds any relationship together. Respect. And now, every action I took from that point wasn't driven by pain. It was driven by calculation. The next morning, I woke up early. Earlier than usual. Made breakfast. Went for a run. Didn't even check my phone. She asked if everything was okay. I said, perfect. That day, I stayed late at work. And when I came home, I didn't tell her what I was doing. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to be seen. I was starting to disappear. From her schedule. From her narrative. From her control. And she didn't even notice. But she would. And when she finally did, she'd realize that the man she mocked wasn't weak. He was just quiet. Until he wasn't. A few days later, I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in a while. Her name was Brianna. A mutual friend. Closer to her than to me. She'd always been polite, friendly at parties, liked our couple photos like clockwork. But the message was short. Hey, not trying to get involved, but just be careful who you trust. That was it. No context. No follow-up. But it hit like a flare. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. I knew what it meant. Brianna had heard something. Probably more than just that bathroom conversation. And if she had the instinct to reach out, it meant whatever Jessica had been saying wasn't a one-time joke. It was a pattern. I started paying closer attention. She still touched me. Still smiled. Still asked how work was going, what I wanted for dinner, if I wanted to watch something before bed. But it all felt curated. Like a script she didn't know I'd already read. I noticed how she texted more when I wasn't home. How she angled her screen when I walked in the room. How her laugh changed when she was on the phone with certain people. She was building two realities. One where I was still her reliable man, and one where I was less. A placeholder. A safety net. A man she could downplay behind closed doors, then lean on when the world felt too heavy. And suddenly, I saw it all differently. Every compliment with a sharp edge. Every suggestion disguised as support. Every quiet comparison to other couples, or how things used to be. It had been there long before the bathroom. The problem wasn't what she said. The problem was what she believed. So I did what she never expected. I agreed with her. At least on the surface. I leaned into the image she created, the weak, quiet, soft version of me. But under it, I was building something else. At the gym, I stopped going through the motions. Started training harder. Longer. At work, I stopped taking the easy projects. I stepped up. Said yes to the tough ones. Took more space at the table. I even changed the way I dressed. Sharper lines. Cleaner cuts. Less comfort, more intent. She noticed. But she thought it was for her. That I was finally becoming what she wanted. And that was her first mistake. She thought she was still in control. She didn't see the difference between validation and evolution. And I wasn't evolving for her. I was preparing for her absence. People rarely confess with words. They confess with patterns. And once I shifted from emotion to observation, everything started adding up. Jessica still slept beside me, still kissed me before leaving for work, still posted the occasional couple photo to keep up appearances. But the rhythm was off. One night, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up. A message preview. He doesn't even realize. No name. Just that sentence. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. That one line was a mirror. It told me everything. I started noticing her bank alerts. She'd turned off notifications for large purchases. Subtle, but deliberate. A separate email account started showing up on delivery packages. One I didn't recognize. Then I remembered the iPad she stopped using. Said it was slow. Claimed it barely held a charge. But it still sat in the bottom drawer of the desk, forgotten, or maybe just dismissed. I charged it one evening, and it came alive like it had been waiting. Same Apple ID. Same iMessages. Same cloud sync. Different truth. Nothing explicit. No photos. No confessions. Just tone. Just context. Conversations where I was mentioned like a roommate. A support beam. A man who meant well, but wasn't exciting. Who tried hard, but never led. And worse, laughter. Jokes. Little jabs she never made to my face. That was the moment I stopped asking myself what I did wrong. Because it wasn't about weakness. It was about expectation. She didn't want strength. She wanted entertainment. Novelty. Emotional tension she could control. So I stopped playing into her frame. I didn't become aggressive. I became unavailable. Emotionally. Mentally. Even physically. She started noticing the silence. One night she asked why I wasn't trying anymore. I looked her in the eyes and said, maybe I already tried enough. She didn't respond. The next day, I took a different route to work. Stopped going to the same gym. Changed my routines. Switched my passwords. Took back small pieces of space she didn't realize she occupied. I wasn't loud about it. That's what made it powerful. She began to feel the shift. She'd reach for me in bed, and I'd already be asleep. She'd text me during the day, and I'd respond hours later. With short, polite messages. No wait. She was still laughing with her friends. Still performing. But now it was one-sided. Because I wasn't listening anymore. Not to her stories. Not to her excuses. Not to her noise. I'd already heard enough. She didn't notice the exact moment I disappeared. Because I didn't slam the door. I just stopped answering it. It began on a Thursday. I packed a bag and left early. Earlier than usual. No goodbye. No note. Just gone before sunrise. I didn't go far. Just far enough. A friend had an empty guest apartment above his garage. Nothing fancy. Quiet. No one around. I took the key without explanation. He didn't ask questions. Just gave me a look that said, I get it. And that was enough. I turned off my phone for the first time in years. No alerts. No buzzing. Just silence. I didn't text her. Didn't explain. Didn't warn. She called 6 times that day. Left 3 voicemails. The first calm. The second anxious. The third with that sharp edge in her voice. The one she used when control started slipping. Then came the texts. Are you okay? Where are you? Call me back. And finally, when I didn't respond. Seriously, I stayed offline for 72 hours. In that time, I trained harder than I ever had. Cooked every meal. Read. Journaled. Slept like I hadn't in months. Freedom doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it's the sound of no one needing you. And she hated it. Because her world only worked when she was at the center of mine. But now, she was orbiting a space that didn't pull her in anymore. On the 4th day, I turned my phone on. Dozens of missed calls. A string of messages that moved from concern to accusation, then circled back to desperation. She had even called my coworker. Left a message with HR. Posted a vague Instagram story with a sad quote. Something about people disappearing when you need them most. But I wasn't disappearing. I was removing her access. Piece by piece. Quietly. Effortlessly. I returned home that evening without a word. No luggage. No explanations. She asked where I'd been. I just said out. She tried to argue, tried to escalate, but I didn't respond. Because silence doesn't argue. It wins. That night, she watched me as I fell asleep. Calm, composed, unreachable. And for the first time in our relationship, she realized she didn't know where I was. Not just physically. Emotionally. And that scared her more than anything. Because the man who once tried to prove himself had vanished. And the man who replaced him didn't need to. There was one name that kept popping up. A contact she swore was just a friend. An old college buddy who checked in sometimes. I never questioned it. Not because I trusted her, but because I no longer cared. But I watched. Patterns always speak louder than words. Every time I disappeared, she texted him. Not family. Not close girlfriends. Him. At first, it was subtle. A heart reaction on a story. A DM late at night. Then a call she'd taken the kitchen with her back to the hallway. Voice low, hand covering her mouth when she laughed. She thought I wasn't paying attention, but I wasn't the same man anymore. I didn't confront her, didn't accuse. I just traced the trail. And eventually, I found what I needed. He wasn't some harmless friend. He was trying to play the role I'd abandoned. Only he didn't know the full story. He was stepping into her narrative without realizing she'd rewritten me to fit her ego. A mutual acquaintance from my gym knew him. I asked questions without asking directly. The answers confirmed what I suspected. He had a girlfriend. She didn't know about Jessica, and that gave me all the leverage I needed, without ever lifting a finger. I printed the screenshots. Messages from her tablet. Innocent on the surface, suggestive between the lines. Stacked them in a blank envelope. No return address. No signature. I mailed it to his apartment. Let the truth deliver itself. I didn't want to watch it unfold. I just wanted the structure to shake, not from my hands, but from her own carelessness. It took 4 days. Jessica came home angry. Unraveled. Said nothing. Slammed drawers. Paced the hallway like she'd lost control of a conversation she didn't even know was being watched. She looked at me like she was waiting for a reaction. But I wasn't playing anymore. Let her drown in her own games. Later that night, I saw her scrolling through messages, refreshing repeatedly, waiting for a reply that never came. She texted him twice. Deleted both before sending a third. He left her on read. That was the moment I knew. The fantasy she was building, the backup plan, the second storyline, was collapsing. Not because I exposed her, but because I let her lies exist in daylight. That's the problem with shadows. They disappear the moment you stop standing in front of them. And I was no longer her cover. People began to notice. Not because I said anything, but because I stopped pretending. We went to a family gathering one weekend. Her cousin's engagement party. Normally I'd play the role. Smiles, conversation, hand on her back, always present, always supportive. This time I didn't. I arrived late. Brought my own car. Didn't stand beside her when photos were taken. I spoke less. Observed more. Her mother pulled her aside. Whispered something. Jessica's smile wavered for half a second. Later that night, while everyone toasted the couple, her friend Kara leaned across the table and said, "You guys okay? You seem different." Jessica laughed too quickly, too loud. I just sipped my drink. Kara looked at me again, and I could tell. She saw it. The shift. The absence. After the party, Jessica asked why I was so quiet. I didn't answer. The next morning, she posted an old photo of us. Captioned it with something nostalgic. Forced. The kind of post that tries to fix what real moments can't. No one commented. Except Brianna. She wrote, "Still pretending?" That comment disappeared after 10 minutes. But the echo stayed. Jessica started calling friends more often, trying to reconnect. One by one, they began to drift. Not because of me, but because people feel tension even when it's unspoken. The curated image cracked. And behind it wasn't chaos, just nothing. She sat in silence one afternoon, scrolling through her contacts, phone in hand, face blank. I passed her on my way to the kitchen. She didn't look up, didn't ask where I was going, because she knew I wouldn't tell her. And worse, she knew she didn't deserve to know. Her world began shrinking. Not from scandal, from disinterest. She wasn't shamed. She was ignored. That's the sharpest kind of consequence. One night, she tried to host a dinner, invite a few friends over, play the happy couple routine. 2 canceled. 1 didn't respond. The last showed up, stayed for 20 minutes, then said she forgot about another appointment. Jessica smiled through it all, but her hands trembled while clearing the plates. She asked me if something had changed. I said, "Everything's the same," and walked into the other room. Because sometimes the most brutal punishment isn't destruction. It's distance. And she was finally feeling it. She started staying up late. Not for me, but because the silence of the house grew too loud when the lights were off. She sat on the couch night after night, scrolling through the same apps, looking for something, anything, that would reflect her back to herself. But the likes had faded. The replies slowed. The invites stopped. The girl who used to be the center of the circle now existed on the edge of it. And every time she tried to step back in, the space had already closed. I was still there, physically. I made coffee in the morning, folded laundry, answered with polite one-word replies. From the outside, I was the same man. But I had become something else. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't cold. I was just gone. In front of her, but not for her. And she could feel it. She tried little things, cooking dinner, suggesting a weekend trip, brushing against me when passing through the kitchen. None of it landed, because she wasn't touching me. She was reaching for a version of me that didn't exist anymore. One night, I saw her standing in the hallway, holding her phone, staring at an old photo of us from years ago. Her face didn't show sadness. It showed confusion, as if she was trying to remember when it had all slipped away, not realizing she was the one who cut the rope. Her voice got quieter in the house, less confident, less sharp. She stopped mocking, stopped pushing, started watching me closely, like I was a stranger who looked familiar but spoke in a language she'd forgotten. She'd ask if I was okay. I'd say fine. She'd ask what I was thinking. I'd say nothing much. And that was true, because by then, I wasn't thinking about her at all. My focus was elsewhere, back on myself, on the man I used to be before I gave too much, before I twisted myself into something softer to make her feel more in control. I started spending more time out of the house, at the gym, at work, with old friends I hadn't seen in years. I didn't lie about where I was. I just didn't offer details. She began waiting up for me. I'd walk in at midnight and find her on the couch, pretending to be asleep. The TV on, volume low, phone in hand. She never said it, but I could see it in her eyes. She was scared, not of losing me, but of the version of herself she saw without me. She was realizing that the man she thought was dependent was actually the only thing holding her together. And now he was just a ghost in the hallway. It came on a Sunday. She waited until the house was clean, the air was quiet, and there was nowhere else for me to be but in front of her. She sat across the room, not angry, not defensive, just tired. And for the first time in months, she looked at me without pretending. There was no mask left to wear. She asked softly, "What happened to us?" I didn't respond right away, because her question wasn't real. It was a performance for a scene that ended a long time ago. I just said, "You stopped seeing me." She flinched at that, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. She tried again, said she missed the way we used to talk, said she felt like she didn't know me anymore. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You don't." That was the only moment her confidence cracked, not because of what I said, but because I meant it. She asked if there was someone else. I shook my head, and that was worse for her, because if there was someone else, she could blame that. But this was pure. I didn't need a reason to leave. I just didn't need a reason to stay. She started crying. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The silent kind. Tears that fell without sound, without resistance. The kind that aren't meant to manipulate, just to mourn. I let her cry. Didn't touch her. Didn't move closer. Because I wasn't hers to comfort anymore. She said she'd try harder. She said she could change. She asked for one more chance. I stood up. Not abruptly. Calmly. I looked at her like I was seeing her for the last time, and maybe I was. And I said something she didn't expect. "I'm not angry. I'm just done." Then I walked past her. Not out the door. Just out of the conversation. Out of the dynamic. Out of the version of me she thought would always wait. She didn't follow. Didn't scream. Didn't beg. Because somewhere in her, she understood. This wasn't a moment. This was a decision. I spent the rest of the day in silence. And she stayed in the living room, phone in hand, staring at nothing. She tried to call her sister later that night. No answer. Tried to FaceTime a friend. No pickup. The screen reflected her own face back at her. And for the first time, she looked unfamiliar, even to herself. She didn't lose a fight. She lost access. And once that's gone, there's no way back. It started slow. Then it all came crashing down. Jessica's job had always been her anchor. A place where she was admired, respected, needed. But even that began to slip. She missed meetings. Showed up late. Snapped at the wrong person one too many times. Word spread. People noticed the shift, the dullness behind her charm, the cracks in her image. One afternoon, I heard her arguing on the phone in the kitchen. She thought I wasn't listening. They were reducing her hours. Restructuring. Not firing her, but phasing her out. Her voice trembled, but she held it together until the call ended. Then silence. No plates thrown. No tears. Just that stillness. The kind that only shows up when something you depended on disappears. That night, I came home late. Again. She didn't ask where I was. Didn't look up from the table. She was reading a letter, her name in bold, black letters at the top. HR letterhead. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were not. We didn't speak. Because by then, we had nothing left to say. A few days later, I saw her scrolling through old photos. Her finger hovered over one of us at a wedding, smiling, laughing, in sync. She didn't delete it. She just stared at it. Like it belonged to strangers she vaguely remembered. Then came the final click. She tried to message the friend again. The one who had once been her fallback plan, her emotional parachute. The message never delivered. Blocked. And with that, the fantasy was gone. No man in the wings. No career to lean on. No circle of friends to validate her. She tried to reach out to my sister. An apology disguised as a check-in. It was left on read. She asked my best friend if I'd said anything about her. He answered, "He doesn't talk about you." Because I didn't. Not out of bitterness. But because she was no longer a part of my story. Just a chapter I'd already closed. She broke one last time, not in front of me, but behind the door. I heard it. Quiet sobs. The kind you release when there's no one left to hear you. I didn't comfort her. Didn't walk in. Didn't even pause. Because nothing about her breakdown belonged to me anymore. I wasn't her reason. And I wasn't her rescue. I had become something else entirely. Untouchable. Free. The version of myself I'd buried to keep us afloat. He was back now. And she had no place in that version of my life. The morning I left, there was no suitcase. No slammed doors. No loud music to announce my absence. Just silence. And movement. I had been preparing for weeks. Quietly shifting documents, transferring accounts, redirecting mail. Everything calculated. Everything clean. The lease had already been updated. The car already retitled. The keys to the new place were already in my pocket. I waited until she left for a walk. Headphones in, face blank, drifting through a neighborhood that no longer felt like ours. While she wandered the same block, trying to find something familiar in it, I packed what little was still mine. Not much. A few clothes. A watch. A book she never understood. No photos. No letters. No goodbye note. By the time she returned, the apartment looked untouched. Like I'd been erased, not removed. She walked into the bedroom and stood still. My closet was empty. Drawers half open. The air told her everything I didn't. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Because she knew. This wasn't a threat. This was closure. Later that day, she texted, "We should talk." I read it. Didn't respond. She followed with, "Please. Just one conversation." I blocked the number. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Because closure doesn't require discussion. It requires decision. And I had made mine long ago. From that day forward, I didn't check her social media. Didn't ask about her through friends. Didn't track her down or wonder what she was doing. She became what she made me feel for so long, irrelevant. I focused on rebuilding. Not from pain. From clarity. I reconnected with myself. Picked up passions I'd left behind. Found stillness without the noise. And I smiled again, not because life got easier, but because I got lighter. Weeks later, a mutual friend told me she'd been asking about me. Not directly, just circling. I told him, she doesn't need answers. She needs silence. And I meant that. Because when people lie loud enough, the truth only hits when everything else is gone. She had to sit with it now. Not my absence, but her own choices. The next time she opened her mouth to explain the story, there'd be no one left to listen. Because I wasn't coming back. And I didn't leave a door open behind me. I just stepped through it and closed it quietly. Final words? I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And that silence? It says everything. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.